So I'm a big-time camper, never been scared by critters or anything. But this one thing, man, it ain't no animal. About 5 years ago, my sis and I decided to go backpack camping across the Great Plains in the U.S. Covered loads of kick-ass spots like Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, you name it. Made it to Colorado, my absolute favorite place. We found a cool campground to crash at for a week. Been having a blast exploring and hiking around some epic mountains. It's so stunning here. So like on day 3 during sunset, we started heading back to camp and kinda got sidetracked. We were hiking, took a break for water and a snack. Then bam, this nasty stench hits us. At first it smelled like trash, but it got worse the longer we hung out. The smell was like a dead body, no joke. I pointed it out to my sister to make sure I wasn't losing it. We thought it might be a skunk, but that was unlikely. Maybe a dead animal, but then what if the predator appeared? Or even worse, whoever gobbled it up is still lurking around. Just our luck. So we're done eating and decide to head back to the site. But then, boom, something stopped us dead in our tracks. A few yards ahead there's this thing. The best I can describe it is that it's a figure. Like I said, it was getting dark, so no clear details of this thing, just this huge shadow. Saw this massive shadow with gigantic antlers. Was it an elk? A moose? Who knows? Me and my sister were just gawking at it when she suddenly thinks, hey, why not go up to it? I suggested we shout at it, so we both yell a simple, hello. It was silent for a bit, then the spookiness kicked in. A little girl's voice answers back, hi, can you help me? We both freak out, because what we're looking at is definitely not a little girl. Hell, it might not even be human. If we heard that voice when we hadn't seen anything, it probably could have fooled us. But to hear a little girl's voice coming out of this huge monster, that was just gross and scary as hell. Thinking about it now, it didn't even sound that much like an actual girl. So it sounded like someone was faking a little girl's voice, like a recording or a dang good impression. Even now, I'm sure it wasn't real. Then, as if it realized we weren't buying it, its eyes started glowing. This is where people usually think I'm joking. No joke, this thing's eyes started glowing yellow and then poof, it vanished, scared the heck out of us. This beast was massive, had horns, and smelled so bad you'd puke. It totally gave off a supernatural vibe, so we immediately knew coming closer was a bad idea. We backtracked to our campsite, deciding it was too late and probably safer to stay put rather than trekking miles in the dark to our car. Won't lie, we didn't sleep at all that night. It was nuts, like, what even was that thing? Next morning, we're packing our stuff to dip out of there, and guess what? The smell's back. Same nasty, rotting stench we had the night before, all around us. Freaky stuff, right? I wasn't sure, though, if the smell had anything to do with that thing we saw. So we packed our stuff up super carefully, me constantly scanning around, half expecting to spot a demon or something. Seriously, didn't want a repeat of any weird crap. Heard a couple of things, but nothing major. That stinky creature or whatever was MIA. All's well that ends well, right? Anyway, thanks for hearing me out. This stuff's been on my mind for ages. Got a new security system a couple months ago, which came with 2 cameras, one on the doorbell, another in the backyard. We don't live in a bad area, but porch piracy still happens, plus we order a lot of stuff from Amazon. Also, we got 2 dogs who figured out how to trigger the backyard camera to tell us they want to come in. We live out in the sticks with a massive yard where we let our dogs run. Worked great until some unknown critter started setting off our security camera at night. The notification ding would wake us up. Super annoying. We resorted to turning off our phones at night after the dogs were in. We still wanted to know what was up. Tried to check the video, but man, it was too damn dark to see anything clearly. Sometimes we'd see a weird blur, but could have been just a shadow, who knows. So we started to ignore the darn notifications. A month later, one of our pups came home hurt. My poor dog was all scratched up and punctured by something's teeth. He was wailing and it totally freaked us out. We hauled ass to the vet and got him fixed up. He's gonna be all right, but they shot him up with a bunch of meds anyway. Vet couldn't even tell us what attacked him. Scary stuff. Dude claimed the bite marks looked doggish but way too big to be a pet. We couldn't match it to anything we knew. After that, we kept our dogs close, never letting them out of sight when they were in the yard. Our bitten dog never strayed far from the house either. Weird, right? We threw around a few ideas like fencing a smaller area, but the dogs were too hyper for that. So we decided to wait and see if the problem recurred. After a few months, things seemed cool, so we began to chill out a bit, letting them stay out longer and stopped babysitting them 24/7, hoping the earlier thing was just a random incident. For some time, everything seemed all right. So one evening, just before dark, our dogs started going mad. We rushed out, shouting their names. They just hung around our property's edge, growling at something invisible. After some time, they finally came to us. I made sure to leave my phone volume up that night. For some reason, I wanted to know if something was really lurking outside, like the thing that got our dog. I couldn't sleep and was switching between window watching and checking our security app. Nothing showed up till 1 a.m., so I chilled and dozed off. Thank God my phone's alert only caught me half snoozing. Woke up and snatched my phone. That dark blur was in the video again. There's definitely something out there. And we both creeped downstairs, no lights on, peeked out the back door, hoping to see the dark blur we've been hearing about, kept the lights off so we didn't scare it. After about 10 minutes, we finally saw it. Big, dark, and creepy, walking way off at the end of the yard. And by walking, I mean this thing was standing upright, like a human. Spooky stuff. Weird shit, right? Thought it was an animal at first. Now it feels like someone's snooping around. I had this hunch that whatever attacked our dog was in our backyard. Not so sure now. Pretty confusing. So we got a potential wild beast and a weirdo on the loose. What are the chances? We hung around trying to catch a better glimpse in case we need to tip off the cops. Finally, it got closer to the house, close enough for us to spot all that fur in the moonlight. It was getting closer though, so I decided to hit it with the back floodlight when it got near. It took a bit, but it finally got close enough. Flipped on the backyard light and this thing screams and bolts, super tall, covered in fur with this freaky face. Honestly, it looked like some kind of hellhound with a snout and these long, wicked teeth. Glowing reddish-orange eyes on what looked like a half-dog, half-human thing. Super creepy. Called the cops and animal control. They thought we were nuts. Honestly, still questioning if we were seeing things. Can something like that even exist? Cops half-heartedly said they'd search the woods and set traps, but we knew that was bull. They never bothered to update us, but thankfully whatever it was hasn't been back either. Still, we're keeping our fingers crossed it stays that way. Hey, I totally dig horseback riding. Horses are so cool. They listen to you, but still do their own thing. It's like a respect and trust thing. Whenever I can, I love to saddle up and explore the trails here in Bangor, Maine. Been living here for a bit now. Been riding for about an hour when my horse Sparkles started tweaking. Sparkle's usually a total rock. I mean, we've ridden through thunderstorms, no sweat. So her being all jittery was a big red flag. Tried calming her down with some pets and sweet talk, but nothing. Although everything in me was saying turn back, something kept pushing me onward. The path was kind of dark and unfamiliar, probably because of the sunset. I figured Sparkles freaking out was just due to a distant coyote or a deer we startled. Kept going into the woods and started smelling that damp, earthy forest smell. The silence around was deafening. Out of nowhere, this really weird sound, sort of like a cross between a yelp and a growl, nearly knocked me off Sparkle. Never heard anything like this in these woods. It echoed around and freaked Sparkle out. So something spooked me right away. I got the heebie-jeebies, hairs standing up on the back of my neck and all that. Stuff just wasn't right. Found some massive footprints. No clue what they could be from. Tree branches snapped around us and there was this creepy feeling like we were being watched. So even though I was pretty freaked out, my curiosity was killing me. I pushed Sparkle forwards, trying to make sense of the creepy stuff we saw and heard. Suddenly, this massive creature jumped into our path. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just any animal. Ran into something that was super hairy. Kind of like a bear, but my brain kept screaming Sasquatch. I was legit freaked out. This thing was pretty far off, but you could tell it was huge. Think taller than me by a long shot and wider than the Rock at his prime. This dude was big. Seriously. This critter had a weird cone-shaped head that made it look even more freaky. I was scared out of my mind when it rolled its eyes at me. Those black pinpoints kind of shocked me into place. Felt my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Sparkle, my horse, was on edge too, stomping around like crazy. This thing growled at us before I could even think about bolting, giving me chills. I kicked Sparkle, my horse, to bolt off back the way we'd come to dodge whatever was behind us. As we rocketed out of there, I heard some creepy tree crunching and branch snapping sounds. This super freaky howling echoed around like it was following us, long after I couldn't see whatever was causing it. We finally made it out of the forest and back to my place, our sudden entry startling my neighbors. Once I got Sparkle settled, I tried to explain what happened to my buddies, who just stared at me, totally shocked. Ever since I heard that damn Bigfoot growl, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. He was huge and smelled like death, and this whooping sound he made was straight out of some horror movie. Now every day is full of anxiety and constant freakouts about the whole thing. I can't even go back to the trails that I used to love. And don't get me started on my dreams. Bigfoot's creepy eyes haunt me every night. So apparently other folks in Bangor started to experience the same crazy stuff. Sightings, weird sounds, and that odd smell had me thinking that Bigfoot's moved into town. Who would have thought our quiet little city would have its own creepy cryptid? Wanted to share a story that's been on my mind. My wife Macy and I had a trip to Death Valley National Park a few years back. You get it, the one known as the hottest place on Earth. Massive stretch of land that's pretty much a desolate beauty. Sun was crazy bright on the cracked desert, and the rocky outlines looked like Earth's skeleton. Just to clarify, Macy and I ain't the resort type. We're total thrill seekers, always venturing into uncharted territories just for kicks. The feeling you get in a place like Death Valley is unreal. It kind of shows you how tiny we are in this raw and untamed world. There's something freeing about saying bye to skyscrapers, swapping it for nature. Every day was a new adventure, checking out a different trail. Those wind-carved sand dunes, salt fields, and gnarled rocks were just mind-blowing. We stopped a lot, not cause we were tired, but to take pics. Every pic was different, like a snapshot of some ancient, untouched world. The temp out there changes a lot between day and night. Desert's hot as hell during the day and turns into a freezer at night. We'd just chill in our tent, curled up in our sleeping bags, with only the occasional wind gust breaking the silence. Had a wild feeling except for this one night. Usually the desert would go super quiet when it got dark. But not this night. Some weird thing showed up and broke the silence. Thinking back, can't say we heard it, not in the usual way at least. Felt this weird vibe in the air. Macy did too, clutching my arm. We poked our heads out the tent and looked around, but it was way too dark. Figured it was probably some nighttime critter doing its thing, so there was definitely something creeping on us out there. Smart enough to not let us spot it, though. I thought the sneaky thing would move on, but man, it really spooked me. Never been that scared, ever. Felt really freaked, like it had singled me out or something. Felt trapped. No joke. Isn't it weird how feeling like you're being watched totally messes with your fight or flight response, gives you goosebumps and makes you feel super exposed? Honestly, I just wanted to run away, but we were stuck. We just huddled in our tent, waiting for any weird sounds. Heard some weird noises like rocks moving or something scratching. Although any critter could have caused it, I just had this feeling we were in trouble. Don't ask me how. It's like a gut feeling or some sort of sixth sense, I guess. Who knows? Felt like a mouse that knew a cat was around that night. I'm not one to believe in Bigfoot and stuff. I'm a science guy. But that night in Death Valley, I wasn't so sure anymore. You know, intense stuff was going down and something just wasn't right in that desert. I mean, how did this crap wrap up, you ask? Not really, I guess. Right before the sun got up, I saw something a bit shady from the corner of my eye. Guys, honestly, it was like some shadow monster or something. I tried figuring it out, but heck, it's like a gigantic blob right over our tent. The way Macy was clutching my hand, she was scared shitless too. We were freaking out, trying not to make a sound, and then boom! Something is right next to our tent entrance. It growls. We can see it's almost human-shaped, but weirdly stretched and way bigger than a person. Couldn't see any features, just a shadowy figure. Then poof, it was gone back into the darkness. The desert went quiet again like nothing happened. We were just left in our tent, scared out of our minds. Couldn't go back to sleep as we were freaking out about the weird sounds. Tried passing it off as just a coyote or some other desert critter, but knew it wasn't that. Next morning, everything was sunny and normal, which felt creepy after the scary night. Checked around the campsite to find any sign of what happened, but found nothing. Found some weirdly big footprints near our tent, like nothing you'd find normally. They were totally dinosaur-like, not saying there are actual dinos chilling in our backyard, but hey, something's making freaky Jurassic Land footprints out there. Our vacation turned into a sketched-out mess after we saw that creepy figure under the moon. We bolted through our lunches and got out of Dodge earlier than planned. Every time I looked back on the drive home, all I saw was Death Valley's spooky, rocky landscape. Basically, an infinity of eerie, unsolved mysteries. Still got like 1,000 questions with 0 answers. How are these things still around today? How'd they stay under the radar for so long? Beats me. This happened on one early morning shift at Cape Henlopen State Park, Delaware. And just to set the scene for you, my day as a ranger usually starts pretty early, basically at the crack of dawn. Now Cape Henlopen is my stomping ground. Has been since I started working here. Mornings in the park have their own special charm, as you get to know the spaces and the creatures the best at this time. On this particular day, my tasks weren't any different than usual. After a brief stop at the station to grab a cup of coffee, I headed out on patrol. Just before noon, I received a call about a curious raccoon who found himself trapped in a bear-proof trash can. That was the extent of my excitement at that point. With the raccoon rescued, I went on about with the rest of the mundane tasks on my list. It wasn't until after lunch that my day really got interesting. I got a call from the office about some strange noise complaints from the beach area. Now, ordinarily, noise complaints aren't really our department, but it was a slow day and we had sent some people home. Also, truth be told, I was eager for a bit of a change. The beach was a short ride from where I was, so I hopped on the quad and headed off. It didn't take long to get there. I stopped the quad a bit away from the reported area and continued on foot, hoping to be able to hear better and figure out what was causing the commotion. As I walked along the shoreline, trying to pinpoint the source of the noise, I started to feel weird. Like it was harder to breathe and the air was heavier than normal. Now, I've been in the wild long enough to know that when you get that kind of feeling, you pay attention to it. It wasn't just the weather. Something else was different. Then I heard it, an uncanny screech-like sound coming from further down the shoreline, so I faced that direction and started walking. As I got closer to the sound, it became more defined, like an animal's screech, only it sounded like it was echoing, like it was coming from somewhere deeper, almost like it was resonating from a crevice or cave or something. Near where the noise was the strongest, I spotted something even stranger. There was this huge, indistinct print in the sand. This wasn't like any bird, mammal, or reptile that I'd ever seen in my years on the job. It looked, well, alien. Curiosity won over, and I followed the eerie noise and the prints, feeling the hair raising on the back of my neck all the while. The deeper I ventured into the dunes, the more I felt like I wasn't alone. Have you ever had that feeling, like something's watching you and you just can't shake it off? It was like that. So I slowly turned around to try and find the source, and that's when I spotted it. This big, shadowy figure partially obscured by a dune. It was nearly 5.5 feet tall with a broad, almost human body. But its most prominent feature was this insane set of wings. They were large, refracting sunlight like black leather. I couldn't make out the details of its face, though. It was cloaked in darkness except for two reflective red eyes that met mine. I was paralyzed. I could feel its eyes fixed on me. It was calculating, intelligent, and for a split second I questioned my place in the natural order. I definitely did not feel powerful at that moment. In the blur of an instant, the creature let out that horrific screech again, revealing its gaping, faceless visage, and then, as quick and soundless as the wind, it disappeared. It seemed to glide rather than fly, disappearing between the dunes, leaving me alone on that desolate beach. I was quick to recover my senses. I marked the exact location and the sign in the sand of the creature's presence. And then, against every instinct, screaming to investigate further, I ran. I ran towards the quad and sped away from the beach. The days following the incident were anything but normal. They were filled with restless nights and numerous questions that led to dead ends. I told my co-workers about my encounter in hopes that they could tell me what it was. But not surprisingly, no one believed me. But then I did a little research of my own. I am now certain it was the Mothman I saw that day on the beach. There are no other creatures matching the description online, but I don't feel I can tell anyone about my findings for fear of being labeled as crazy. I already had to deal with my co-workers poking fun at me for weeks when I first mentioned it. But know this, there are things out there that might sound like they only exist in myth and legends. But I'm here to tell you that they just might be real. So, I work as a park ranger, pretty chill job, BTW, at Guadalupe Mountains National Park. It's over in Texas, somewhere west of Carlsbad Cavern if you need a visual. The gig isn't too shabby, beats being cooped up in a sweaty office. And no 2 days are the same. Happened one evening while on shift there. I totally kicked the bucket doing that for sure. But man, this one day was wild. Never thought I'd see some stuff like that. It started like any other, just clocked in for my afternoon shift. Slapped on my uniform, doused myself in bug spray, tied up my boots and threw my gear in the truck. No big deal, right? As a ranger, my main gig is managing the whole human nature mix. I check on wildlife, make sure they're staying wild and not becoming BFFs with tourists. I also keep trails in check, handle any wear and tear from foot traffic. Plus, there's always dealing with campers who reckon feeding the animals is cool. Just doing my usual check on my zone in my truck. It's that good kind of cold outside, you know, the kind where you gotta bundle up or else it chills you to your bones. The mountains are turning this cool lavender color with the evening light. This is why I love the evening shift. Decided to stop by this out-of-the-way little picnic spot called Pine Springs. Had to fix some trail signs today. So I parked my truck, got out and fumbled around with the sign and tools. Then out of nowhere, I get this weird vibe. Ever had that random feeling like you're not alone? Felt it just then, colder and emptier than any regular evening. I paused, screwdriver in hand, and did a quick scan, half expecting to see a bold coyote or some other forest critter, but now was all by myself. At first I thought I was just being paranoid. I looked around again, telling myself it was probably just the wind or some late-night nerves. I laughed off my wild imagination and got back to the job at hand, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling. This shift felt different. Something weird was happening. Suddenly there was this loud buzzing, like a ton of bees in my ears. Quickly checked around again. Just another car or plane. Nope. Freaky stuff happening and my heart was going bonkers. Something was off, so I hit up the ranger station real quick. Couldn't reach anyone and all I heard was a weird hum. My phone was acting up too, as if all the electronics suddenly decided to play hooky. As I was about to jump in my truck, something caught my eye. Saw this weird thing above some trees. Kinda round, not perfectly and sorta hard to see. But it was making this humming sound. Looked pretty small and super metallic from where I was. Looked like I was glowing, lighting up the pine trees below, just chilling there. Got this weird shiver down my spine. Then it moved, fast and sharp, unlike anything I've ever seen. Saw something fly over the trees and then right over me. After it zoomed by, the humming noise quieted down. Just like that. It vanished. I stood there, my heart racing. just gazing at the night sky lit only by distant stars and my truck's headlights. Honestly, the rest of the night is kinda a blur. Got back in my truck without looking in the rearview mirror and drove straight to the ranger station. Stayed up all night trying to wrap my head around that weird-ass event. Like, what the hell was that creature? Where did it vanish? And why the hell was it in the middle of nowhere in a freaking national park? Woke up and went hunting for clues about last night's weird encounter. My tire tracks, check. Tools by the signpost, check. No crazy evidence like metal stuff or odd tracks anywhere. It's like it never even happened.